Okay. Yeah. Very good afternoon to everyone. Um, so I can see on the screen Navyasri, Pranati, Harinath, and who else available? Only five participants and four participants. Okay, fine. Um, so in the last class, we will be actually we were discussing about uh, the what constitutes caste system and how it influences social structure and how that social structure is further influences the caste system and so on. So I think we have discussed that elaborately at length and in the last class. So in this class, so what we'll be trying to do is that in the first half of the class, and we will be discussing about the futures of caste system. And in the next class, I mean the next of the half of the class, and we will be discussing about is there a possibility of change in social system in caste system. So that will be we will be discussing in another part of the today's class. So as we discussed yesterday that the futures of among the futures of caste system, right? So one of the main futures of caste system is as you all know that the hierarchy stands at point that because that hierarchy is a key phenomenon, is a key factor that actually gives a value and a future to caste system. So we can say that hierarchy stand at the top of the order when we define the futures of caste system. So, what is hierarchy here? So, as we discussed yesterday, that that hierarchy again, this caste system is composed of hierarchy system. So that is again a derivative of Varna system. So each caste is graded to its status and role in comparison to another caste. So one caste is placed above the other, and one caste is placed below the other. So in a way that everywhere that you can see power in terms of the caste system, and followed by the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas and Shudras, and of course among the this Varna system and this untouchable caste do not find any place in this hierarchy structure. However, this untouchable caste were placed at the bottom of the Varna system. In other words, that this among all these upper higher caste, they dominate over the lower caste, and one for instance, a Brahmin dominates over the Kshatriya dominates over the Vaishyas, and Vaishyas dominate over the Shudras. But all these four Varnas, they dominate over the Dalits. So it's a like it's a clear cut hierarchy that one can see in caste system. So and also we discussed that endogamy also features one of the prominent features of caste system. So what is endogamy? Endogamy means that marrying among themselves, within particular caste. They don't allow their children to get married out of that, the caste system. And why the caste system is so strong over the lot of thousands of years? It's because that they maintain their own clan, they maintain their own. They don't allow their children to get married out of their caste. So that as long as one practices that endogamic future, that that automatically the members of that particular caste also doubles and triples within that particular caste. So there is no intercaste, and one cannot see a rigidity of that that caste component. So this endogamy plays a crucial role in defining one of the major features of caste system. One of the major features of caste system, and association with a hereditary occupation. as we discussed also, this another future is that hereditary occupation. That that occupation, it comes from by birth. That's called ascribed status. That status we have in sociological discourse, we can discuss about, there are two types of status. One is the ascribed status, another one is the achieved status. So what is that ascribed and what is that achieved? So ascribed means that status you get by birth. It's not that it's you come to the one comes to this world with that identity, right? That one of the defining features of the birth at the time of that identity is again the caste. Is again the caste. So this is the caste again determines what hereditary occupation. It means what? Suppose if a father is a barber, even the son also automatically it's not only the culture of that caste that is being transferred to another generation, but also the occupational component also, right? Even the children of that particular family, they are either forced to do that occupation, or they are attracted to do that occupation. Why I'm using these two words? One is the forced and one is the attracted. For example, if a brahmin son is very happy to enjoy the supremacy of that occupation. Therefore, he's attracted to that occupation to become a priest in a temple because he enjoys that supremacy. Therefore, he attracted to that. It's a purely voluntary. It's a voluntary kind of attraction. That because that occupation which gives him the social prestige, status, and of course dominance and hegemonic power in the society. Therefore, the son of a Brahmin is invariably attracts to that particular occupation. But whereas for example the son of a Dalit, for example, the son of a Dalit, even if a father is a scavenger, that the son also is forced. So here the son doesn't want to become a scavenger because he wants education, he wants to get status, and then so that he can change his social status and occupational status and as well as the economic status. But here, that what the caste system it orders, rather it forces the son of a Dalit to do a scavenging job, right? To do a scavenging job. So here, that though these are hereditary occupations, hereditary means here one is voluntarily going and occupying that position, but whereas the other person is not, it's not voluntary, it's purely involuntary. But though he doesn't want to become a scavenger, but this caste system it forces him to do that particular occupation because all the occupations in the society is sanctioned. It's sanctioned by the religious scriptures such as Vedas. You can find Upanishads and so on, right? So here what is happening is that so with this hereditary occupation is of two types, as I told you. The one is the voluntary and involuntary. If somebody wants to have that occupation, do that occupation, they automatically go and do that. But if the other person doesn't want to do that particular occupation, he is forced to do that occupation. So therefore, this one of the another prime features of caste system is the hereditary occupation. One of the prime features of caste system is hereditary occupation, because it is because of the hereditary occupation, this occupational structure of Indian society. When I'm saying Indian society, it is not the overall society. Again, I'm using the word Hindu society in India, right? The Indian Hindu society is again characterized by occupations, right? So a barber does the same particular job. Even the son also goes and do that. And in other words, one can define the one particular caste based on the occupation. You don't have to ask which caste you belong to. Indirectly, you can ask that what occupation you do. Or suppose if a person says that I'm a pottery making, so you can define that what particular caste is. And if a person says that he's a goldsmith, you can in indirectly come to know that what that person belongs to that particular caste, right? So even a Brahmin, for example, you can say Vaishyas, for example. So if a person is engaged in business, you can, that indicates that he is involved in that particular caste. So indirectly, one can know a person's caste and identity based on the occupation that he possesses. So therefore, this hereditary occupation plays a crucial role in defining the futures of caste system, in defining the futures of caste system. And another future of caste system is what? Another future of caste system is food and social intercourse. What I mean here, so the food actually defines one of the major components of caste system. For example, if a person is a vegetarian, right? If a person is vegetarian, it means that either he's a Brahmin by itself, or he's becoming Brahmin to that category. There are two kinds of understanding to this. Nowadays, what is happening is that vegetarians, we see that not only from the Brahmins alone, but even the other castes also, they tend to follow that vegetarianism, right? And of course, nowadays that habits, food habits, and they are now linked to biology, not the theology, right? Not the social structure to altogether. Now everybody wants to maintain diet, becoming vegetarianism, right? This is also growing in India, that why it is happening. On the one hand is that as M.N. Srinivas in another discourse, he talks about two kinds of the social change that tend to happen in India. That is, one thing is that, and he uses the word sensitization, and another concept, he uses the westernization. So what is sensitization, to be precise, and we'll discuss these aspects in the next class. But just to give you to light your mind, that what I'm indicating here is that this sensitization also, that the lower caste, what is sensitization? The lower caste tend to follow the practices and ideologies and the lifestyles of the upper caste. Of the upper caste, in the sense what? Again, preferably Brahmins, right? So they imitate the cultural values of the upper caste. They tend to become they tend to think that they belong to that category. And while doing this exercise, so what this lower caste actually do, that why do they actually practice, is that this, as part of this sensitization process, they think that once they become sensitized during the process of this sensitization, they think that they get some status in society. This is actually the thing, I know that's happening even today also, right? Even today also, suppose if a person is becoming vegetarian, right? If a person is becoming vegetarian, he enjoys some sort of supremacy in society. For example, you can see Kartika Masam, for example, or you can see we have a different traditional calendars in India, in Hindu calendar, right? So once that Masam starts, everybody becomes vegetarian. When you go to the market, so what one can see as a sociologist, that in the market, vegetable prices, they tend to go up, but whereas the non-vegetarian, for example, chicken and fish and mutton, those prices will come down. Will come down. Why? Because suddenly that entire society, they want to become vegetarianism, because they want to follow the practices and ideologies and lifestyles of the upper caste, particularly the Brahmins, right? So in a way, that what is happening is that this food, the concept of food, is also plays a crucial role in defining the futures of caste system, in defining the futures of caste system. So and again you can see that as social intercourse, this social intercourse also plays a crucial role in defining the features of caste system. How? For example, if you go and visit any typical traditional Hindu village, that you can find the social intercourse. The social intercourse is very fixed. In other words, that only particular caste, they sit and have dinner, and whereas the other caste, they don't come and occupy that chair, because that the food and the social interaction also is very limited, is very strict, and is very those practices are again limited to that particular caste. So this food and social intercourse plays a crucial role in defining the futures of caste system. In defining the futures of caste system. And again, you can also see and what the for example custom, dress, and speech also. And by these features also one can define the a person which caste he belong to. For example, the way he dresses. For example, you can see a Brahmin. He doesn't wear any shirt. For example, you can see a sacred thread, right? A dhoti, right? By looking at that custom and dress, you can define his caste. No, so the dress also matters in defining the futures of caste system. But whereas the Dalits, you see that even Dalits even today also they were not allowed. And of course now things are actually changing. But till recently, the Dalits were not allowed to cover their upper part of the body. Even the women also, particularly they are not allowed to cover their bodies. It's like very inhuman thing that those sort of and they are not allowed to wear footwear, right? By looking at their customs and by looking at their attire, by looking at their dress pattern, one can notice that which caste they belong to. And again, the speech, the language they use. For example, the Brahmins use a lot of sanskritized words, right? And very grammatical and grammarly kind of a language. But whereas when you go to the lower ladder of the caste system, you find a very spoken Telugu, right? Spoken language altogether. They use some mass language, and that mass language also is one of the defining features of the caste system that which they belong to, isn't it? So and what I'm trying to indicate here is that all these major features of caste system plays a crucial role in defining the features of caste system. Again, I repeat what we discussed. Just first hierarchy, and the next endogamy, and you have a hereditary occupation we discussed, and of course the food and the social intercourse we discussed. So, and of course the language they speak also we discussed. So all these factors and the futures play a crucial role in making the ingredients in the dish is called the caste system. Among in the dish, all these ingredients plays a crucial role in making that super dish of caste system, isn't it? Any doubts here, friends?
No, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll be moving to another part of the presentation today. That if you have any doubts, you can always ask me and stop me so that I can clarify your doubts right here, right? So after discussing this, now let us understand: is there a possibility of change in caste system? Can one imagine the change in caste system? Suppose if you say that endogamy plays a crucial role in defining the features of caste system, can one see that is there a possibility of exogamy, right? Is there a possibility of intermarriages? Is there a possibility of changes in caste system? Is there a possibility of breaking that hereditary occupation? Right? So we'll be discussing these details at length, in the next part of the class. That when I'm talking about the caste and continuity, so what is continuity in caste system and what is not continuity in caste system? So over a period of time, let us discuss so that you will learn that what are the possibilities of changes in caste system. Can one imagine a social change in caste system? That will be discussing now, right? Uh, uh, as you already know that this caste system, as we discussed, it's a rules of endogamy and restrictions on social intercourse between caste that help to maintain the insularity of such that groups of one over the other. So we'll be discussing that is there a possibility of social mobility and so on, right? So before discussing the caste and social mobility, let us understand what is mean by social mobility. What is mean by social mobility? Social mobility refers to the process by which individuals or groups move from one social status to another in the social hierarchy. In the social hierarchy, social mobility can be either upward or downward. Upward mobility, social mobility, is one where the individual or group moves from a lower status in the hierarchy to the upper status, right? So similarly, that the downward mobility is where a person or group moves from a higher status to a lower one in the hierarchy, right? So as one can see that, as we discussed, that caste is a closed form of social stratification. Why we are saying a closed form of social stratification? Because this, in this caste system, can a mobility happen? Can a mobility happen in the social structure? For example, I'm asking you a question that, there are, as I said, that, there are two kinds of mobility. There are two kinds of mobilities. One is the, again, I'm using the word social mobility, right? Social mobility is in the sense moving here and there, right? Either from lower to upper or upper to lower within the social hierarchy. That's called social mobility, right? So, now let us think that in this way, right? Um, a Dalit, right? A Dalit, and suppose a father from a Dalit caste, he trains his son to become a IS officer, to become a IS officer. So now the son of a Dalit becomes an IS officer, right? So once he gets that position, their economic standards also gets improves. Their mobility from lower to higher, it gets improves slowly, because the son became IS officer, right? Now after that son becomes IS officer, now let us think in practical sense that can their social status also gets changed? Can their social status also gets changed? I can see that it is not possible in caste system, because even that, that economic mobility, educational mobility, occupational mobility changed in that particular family, but that social hierarchy, that they remain, though he became a IAS officer, but he still that Dalit identity follows him, and this, as long as this the Dalit identity follows him, he remains lower again within the caste structure. So here one can see that this caste system is a closed component. It's very closed component where it doesn't allow the lower caste to become higher, to become higher, to become higher. This caste system is considered to be a closed system of social stratification. It's a closed system of social stratification, right? So, however, I'm using the word in literally sense, but in practical sense, but that is that a true closed by itself? Certainly not, because a Dalit, the son of a Dalit, is becoming IS. It means what? It means what? He's not following his father's occupation, right? So he became IS officer. Means what? He broke that hereditary occupation. He broke that hereditary occupation. So if these things happen, so what we are trying to indicate is there is a possibility of change. There is a possibility of change in caste system. There is a possibility of change in the caste system, isn't it? So this, when I'm talking about social mobility, though I'm using it in general sense, but when we using it in particular sense, that it varies from person to person and region to region, right? So therefore, when we talk about caste and social mobility, we are essentially dealing with the process of social change in Indian society. Sociologists particularly observe that in spite of the closed nature of caste system, there have been changes. There have been changes in caste hierarchy and its norms from time to time, isn't it? Because Because though the caste system is very rigid and closed by its nature, there is also possibility of change in caste system, because there is a human agency, there is a human potential, there is a protest from the lower caste that they question the authority and hierarchy of caste system. They are now challenging that hierarchy system. Therefore, they are now seeking power in education. They are seeking power in politics. They are seeking power in economy and occupational status. Now, therefore, there is a possibility of change in caste system per se, right? So, as I said that that from time to time there have been changes that are occurring in caste system, right? So, for example, the culturally accepted practices during the Vedic period of Hinduism became a taboo in the periods that followed. Right? Some of these practices were that of Vedic Hinduism was magico-animistic. Right? Vedic Brahmins drank so much liquor and offered animal sacrifice and ate beef. What I mean, though these are all controversial statements, but here we have a literature that talks about that, which means what? Earlier, these Brahmins during the pre-Vedic period or so, they were the non-vegetarians. But over a period of time, they gave up that non-veg and became pure vegetarians over a period of time. So this is a change one can see. And again, one can see a Kshatriya Vaishyas become a taking the rule of a Kshatriya, and Kshatriyas are taking the rule of Vaishyas, and so on. So one can see this is the interchange of these roles and statuses defines that there is a possibility of change in caste system, that we have the literature to support the historical evidence also, right? So this caste mobility as a process of social and cultural change has, I know, as I told that the has been explained by M.N. Srinivas in the concept sensitization. As I told you that this widespread social and cultural process, that talks about the the concept of sensitization, which is a process I told you that a very lower caste, Hindu caste changes its customs, rites, rituals, ideology, and way of life in the direction of high and frequency twice born caste, right? Because they imitate this lower caste, imitate the cultural values, ideas, and ideology, and the food patterns, the way of lifestyles of the upper caste. That imitation is called, the sensitization. Can we see? I think we can see that sensitization even today also, right? If we can today also, even the lower caste also now they are trying to imitate the values, cultural values of the upper caste, because there are two kinds of that practice. One can see the two connotations of that practice. That one connotation is that either they are liking the caste system, to be with the caste system, so that they enjoy the supremacy and status in society. That is one aspect. The another connotation is that why can't I become a Brahmin? Why can't I become that? That's called a protest. That's called a protest idea. That's called a protest idea, right? Suppose if I want to become like you, it's not only means imitation, but also it is a protest. It is also a protest. So one can see that sensitization is not merely an imitation of higher caste, but it is also a protest against higher caste also. It is also protest against higher caste, because even I also want to become like you means what? So it's a protest. Also, one can see in the caste system, because in the modern era, for example, particularly just before 1920s, so on, that there were a lot of moments that actually happened under the guidance and leadership of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. That one can see that that why they sought an entry to temple. They protested that they want to enter into the temples because the Dalits were not allowed into the temple entry. The people like Ambedkar and the other leaders, and they protested against this. They finally entered into the temple premises, and they also worship the god, and becoming a priest. So it means what? Though they become sensitized here, it's not merely an imitation, it's a protest against those cultural practices and values, saying that I can also become like you. I can also become like you. Isn't it? Isn't it? So this has paved the way for mobility to occur within the caste system. With the advent of the British, the opening of frontiers by means of roads and railways and economic opportunities, cutting across caste barriers, increased the process of caste mobility. As you all know that the advent of British in India, so what they have done, though they have done for their own sake, for their own profitable gains, but it actually turned into a different mobility in India. It's like earlier this village was very restricted. This one particular villager is not being able to was not being able to travel to far distances because his knowledge is limited, because there were no roads at all, there is no connectivity at all, there is no social group that we have today, right? So there is no postal system, there is no exchange of ideas at that time, right before the advent of British. But once the British came, they once they constructed roads and railways. There is what happened is that the movement from one village to another started. The movement of the people from villages to cities also happened. So when that mobility happened, this people tend to leave that village economy altogether, and they tend to leave that village economy. They started coming to the cities in search of new jobs. So when they find a job in the factory and industries, which means what, they are not doing that caste hereditary occupation. So when they're not doing that caste hereditary occupation, when they are choosing to become a factory worker in the urban economy, which means that there was a possibility of caste, possibility of mobility and change in caste system, mobility and change in caste system, isn't it? So the British also that the British rule in India also paved a way for the process of caste mobility in India, for the process of caste mobility in India. So besides this standardization, another major agent of social change was, as I told you, westernization. Westernization. So what is westernization? According to M.N. Srinivas, a famous sociologist from India, and he defines that he says that westernization includes the influences which swept over India during the British rule, bringing in the ideologies of secularism, egalitarianism, and democracy. The new opportunities in education, economy, and polity, in theory, caste-free and open to all. Right? So no one could be denied access to them by reason of birth in a particular caste, sect, or religion. So, however, no social change can bring about a total change of a society. Therefore, we find that the traditional social organization exemplified by the caste system has undergone several changes, yet continues to exist in Indian society, performing same old and some new functions. Right? So, what I mean here, so, sanitation means what? That imitating the values of higher caste. But what is westernization is that ideas of new modernity, that imitating the ideas of new modernity from the Western world is called westernization. Therefore, we are using the word westernization because that West indicates the Western world. Right. So what sort of changes that have come to India with the advent of British rule? So one can notice that English education is one of the prime components, and you find the ideas of equality, you find the ideas of new Indian constitution, you find the ideas of secularism, you find the ideas of democracy particularly, right? So all these ideas, what happened was that they challenged the ideas and ideologies of caste system. In other words, that one can find of course one can say in this also that who are the first people who received those ideas of westernization, Obviously, it is the upper caste who actually benefited from the process of Western model, because they had access to education, they had access to political power, they had access to the in contacts with the British administrators. So in a way that this the upper caste, they had the supremacy of enjoying the benefits of westernization in the first phase. In the first phase. Therefore, one can find that the social reformers of India, for example. So, what is social reformation? And bringing some changes, in society, right? They question the social hierarchy, the caste system, the women's status, and so on. Suppose if you examine the social reformers in India, that's all the social reformers. Incidentally, they are from the upper caste. They are from the upper caste. For example, we can quote Raja Rammohan Rai, right? You can quote Rabindranath Tagore, for example, and from Bengal society, right? Here you can say Gurujad Apparao and Veerashlingam Pantulu and some Reddy communities, and here, right? Across in India, you can find the maximum social reformers. They are from the upper caste backgrounds. Why not from the lower caste background? Because this social reformers that from the upper caste, they actually received the benefits and the ideas of Western culture, ideas of Western culture, ideas of Western culture. So they benefited from them. They benefited from those ideas, right? So, but over a period of time, what happened? They percolated to the down ladder of the lower caste. So once they received the ideas of westernization, they also thought that they also argued for equal space in political structure. They also argued for the equal space in educational structure. They also argued for equal space in occupational structure, right? So this the process of westernization, in a way, the brought the ideas of secularism and egalitarianism and democracy and so on. And you find a lot of women movements. Particularly, the women were denied access to political power, women were denied access to education, women were denied access to public space. They were restricted to kitchen, they were restricted to home, they were restricted to domestic works. But once they received this sort of ideas, with the process of westernization, they also came out of the houses and participated in the movements, social movements, and they argued for a space. They argued for a space for liberty, space for equality, space for egalitarian society, and be it in political power, be it in educational power, be it in occupational power. And particularly Savitribai Phule and others, they played a crucial role for these women groups. Because they are the people who try to inject the values and ideas of westernization in the rural women groups, particularly from the lower caste. Because they said that this is not your life. This is your life is something else. Please come out of this. Come out of the homes and participate in the movements. Those were the slogans at that time. So why it happened? It happened because why those movements actually took a different form, and why mainly the particularly the lower caste women, the lower caste men, why they participated in that movement at mass, in mass. It's because that they were not happy with that caste system altogether at that time. But therefore, one can see a lot of mass movements that actually emerged during the last phase of British rule in India. So all these movements, they joined together under the banner of nationalism that actually paved way for freedom movement in India. That's a different case altogether. But all these movements matters a lot, right? They came out, they came out and they questioned the for a equal space in a political structure, equal space in economic structure, equal space in the education structure, and so on. So they want to have that sphere of the space, equality space, and with the advent of the British rule altogether. So therefore, all these ideas were called under the concept of westernization, my dear friends. Okay, so this westernization, as we discussed, that influences the values and ideologies of secularism, egalitarianism, and democracy in India. Democracy in India. Therefore, the notions of that hierarchical gradation of caste groups, drawing legitimacy from religion, and the concept of purity and pollution, as we discussed in the last class, that have changed with the passing of time, that have changed in the passing of time. That the structural distance between various castes, as we already aware of, that we discussed at length in the last class also, has been defined in terms of purity and pollution, my friends. Why these ideas came, why this westernization came, why these people came into the streets and questioned the supremacy of caste system, because these ideas of purity and pollution played a crucial role in defining the features of caste system. They questioned the values of that, isn't it? Isn't it? There are a lot of the changes, that mobility that actually happened with the advent of British in India, in India. So now one can see, one can ask, a question to ourselves that, but is that a change in totality? Is that change in absolute sense? Certainly not, because there is a lot of changes that are still that they should happen even today also. But because the caste system is becoming so and so strong, every day. There is a joke is that now what has become in modern India, the how caste has become in modern India means that the caste has become modern in modern India. So it's like that, the caste avatar is taking the manifestation of modernity also. He's taking the man. Earlier, people used to think that, if entire education is provided to everybody, that if one can break the hereditary caste occupation, there is a possibility of bringing a change in caste system. But one on the other hand, though this factors and forces that are operating in society, but however, though hereditary occupation is being changed, and though exogamy is also playing a major role, but however, that caste identity is not being changed. In fact, it is becoming modern. It is becoming modern. It is becoming modern, and in a sense that now the caste system has become in such a way that it is trying to emulate the values of modernity. It is trying to emulate the values of modernity and becoming modern, in its own avatar. In its own avatar. So, therefore, my dear friends, so what I'm trying to indicate here is that though those the changes that have happened in the past, even now it is also happened, but it is not in absolute sense. Still, there are many changes that are needed in the caste system, so that a egalitarian society, a human society, can be established in a true sense. So, this when I'm talking about the particularly the now we'll be discussing about the caste and politics, right? Caste and politics, because why I feel like discussing that caste and politics in today's class, because this plays a crucial role in determining the future of a caste system today. And one can see that even in Indian politics also, that so what plays a crucial role, it is the caste again. It is the caste again that plays a crucial role in Indian politics even today. Though everyone talks about democracy, everyone talks about egalitarian society, but this caste identity is becoming so strong in day by day, in day to day, from one election to another in Indian society. So this political structure again is dominated by the caste structure in India. So, in other words, that caste is becoming modern even in political structure, even in political structure. So, friends, a system of social stratification, such as the caste, that rests upon the unequal distribution of power between social status group, having definite position in the prestige hierarchy. Which means what? Which means what? So there is a prestige hierarchy, as I told you, as we discussed, that also applies to power structure also. That also applies to power structure. Now, this lower caste, those who are deprived of political power, from even today also, that one can see that even in the past, that those lives were horrible because they are not allowed in the political structure at all. In the traditional gram panchayats, one can imagine that in the traditional gram panchayat, it's only the upper caste, it's only the Kshatriya caste, it's only the Vaishyas. They tend to dominate the political structure of that village panchayat. But now the people are coming forward. They are now coming forward to question the authority of that village traditional gram panchayat. Now they're seeking political space. They are arguing for a political space in that caste hierarchy. In that caste hierarchy. Now, as a result, after the advent of in the the establishing an independent India, Indian Constitution, and one can see that 73rd Amendment and particularly 74th Amendment, one can see a caste component in that amendments. It talks about the powers to the lower caste. It talks about the power to the women groups, for example. Why it came? Why it came? It came because those were denied earlier. Those were denied earlier because of the dominance and hegemonic power of the ideologies of the caste system. Caste system. So this is very, very, and now Vibro now is talking about the decentralization of power, the decentralization of, and with the introduction of democratic decentralization, particularly, and the universal suffrage, protect the interest of the in the lower caste and backward caste. What I mean here, so the introduction of universal suffrage means what? That voting power. So each person has equal vote in India, equal vote in India. And at the time of drafting Indian Constitution in India, particularly a question that was raised before Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and others, that in fact, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar at the time of drafting the Indian Constitution, he said that though though now we have a Indian Constitution and a lot of measures and protections for the lower caste, he said that there is a possibility of equal political opportunity, but it's difficult to establish equal economic opportunity. And it means what? Everyone is having equal vote, one person, one value in the political system. Okay, suppose if you stand in the political booth right at the time of election, suppose if a megastar Chiranjeev is standing besides me, that even I'm all, when if I cast my vote, my vote is only one value only. And similarly, the megastar Chiranjeevi vote also is one value. You see, so in the political system, one person, one value. That's it. But in the economic system, that is not happening. That is not happening. Though this political system provided an equal opportunity in terms of voting behavior, but when it comes to the occupational structure, that is not happening because one is eating the other's money, right? So only the rich is benefiting the from the political structure and power politics, right? So the poor is becoming poorer and the rich is becoming the richer. So again, there is a caste hierarchy there, and you can find that who is the most richer. Again, you find upper caste, and it's not the lower caste. Though the lower caste is guaranteed one person, one vote in political structure, but is not provided the same value in the economic structure. In the economic structure, it is not that everybody is getting the same money in return, right? Only the few is exploiting over the other and becoming rich, and becoming the rich. So, in a way, that what I'm trying to indicate here is that though there were a lot of the legislations in the Indian constitution that were there to protect the interest of the lower caste and the lower caste groups, but however, in true spirit, that is not being implemented at length. That is not being implemented at full length. So though there was a lot of political mobilization that is happening among the lower caste, because lower caste also they are getting a lot of caste consciousness, because all the lower caste they formed their own caste associations. They now they came to the streets, and they're also participating in the elections, and they're also they also have their own leaders as representatives of their caste associations. But still, the full implementation of those politics are not happening, because that economic power again is rested with the cultural power, is rested with the cultural power. So it's like, the kshatriyas and vaishyas are becoming more and more rich day by day, and whereas the lower caste are becoming poorer and poorer on the other side. So, though there is a lot of political mobilization, they are now coming forward and they question the authority of the Brahminical structure of caste system. But still, there are a lot of changes that are need to be happen, my dear friends. And one can see that how that mobilization, political mobilization, also now lower caste communities. Now, for example, this, as you have noticed that Mandakrishna Madiga MRPS movement is a very phenomenal and a remarkable movement in Indian politics. That, and one can see earlier, in particularly 100 years back or 50 years back, that if a person is from a Madhika community, and suppose if the per caste person asks that person that which caste you belong to, that the Madhika community, the person that belongs to, is unable to express that saying that I'm from a Madhika community, because there are a lot of restrictions, and he used to live in fear at that time. But when this political mobilization came, that when this caste consciousness that actually came into the streets, that these people from this Madhika community also, they are adding tags to that, to their names, saying that Krishna Madhika. So, as far as is a different Madhiga. That Madhiga suffix, is now appearing to their names and saying that yes, I belong to the Madhika community. What you can do. So this sort of attitude, this sort of idea, this sort of protest is actually coming from these lower caste groups, my dear friends. So there are a lot of, however, this even though the lot of political mobilization that is actually happening in a true spirit, by taking the hints and ideas and ideologies of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. But though these lower caste communities still they have to be clever politics in the power structure of caste system, because whenever they come to the streets and protest for political power, this upper caste they actually dominate the sphere of the political those power politics. They are hijacking the politics of the lower caste. Again, these lower caste are becoming subordinates to the higher caste. So this phenomenon one can see even today also, my dear friends. So this is a brief lecture today. We'll be discussing much details in the next class. So hope you enjoyed this class. So in this class, we discussed about the features of caste system, and in the features of caste system, we discussed a hierarchy that plays a huge role in defining the features of caste system. We also discussed endogamy. We also discussed hereditary occupation. We also discussed the food and the social intercourse, and how they influence the futures and hierarchy of caste system. And we also discussed how a custom, how a dress and speech determines the futures of caste system. Also, we discussed, and after that, we discussed. So, what is continuity and what is a social change that is possible in Indian caste system? Also, we discussed at length. So, hope you enjoyed my dear friends. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. Hello, is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Navyasri, I can see Harinath, Pranati.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
do you
sir.
have any questions? Okay, okay, we can meet in the next class, preferably in the next week, I guess. So, as I told you that feel free to ask any questions, and you can come and meet us in the university if you want, and we'll be available there for you. you can come with any doubts, and we are here to clear those doubts for you. Okay, thank you again. Thank you again for joining us today. So all the best, and we'll be meeting in the next class. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.